Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. this morning. Thank you for joining us here in Chambers and those joining us virtually. To start off, in the true spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge all those who call this land home now and for thousands of years in the past. May we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits that this land provides to all of us. I think to get going, I'll throw to our CAO, Cole Beck. We have an introduction to make. So, Cole, I would throw to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we just wanted to introduce our new HR manager, Jared Zeller, here. So we've just asked him to attend today. It's his first council meeting, just to get to know everybody. So Jared's been with us for 4 weeks, and he's well into things already. So welcome addition to the team. We're thrilled to have him, and yeah, just a warm welcome to Jared.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jared. Welcome to Lethbridge County. We've heard great things about your previous work, your work in the community, so we're obviously very excited to have you, and yeah, good luck. Feel free to introduce yourself to, if you haven't already, to all council, and we look forward to having you. Thank you. With that, we can move down. Item B, adoption of our agenda. You have an agenda before you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none. John?
I'd like to move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, John. John has moved for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving down, item C, adoption of minutes. C1, council meeting, August 3rd, 2023 minutes. Are there any errors, omissions, anything arising from those minutes? Claus.
I'd like to move the minutes of August 3rd as presented.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved for the adoption of the August 3rd, 2023 County Council meeting minutes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving down into our agenda, we have two time commitments this morning. We have a 9:15 a.m. delegation with the RCMP, and we have a 10 o'clock delegation with the Iron Springs Water Co-op. So with that, why don't we move down to item E, subdivision applications, and we can start on our first subdivision application, if that's all right. With that, we'll throw to our Supervisor of Planning and Development, Hillary Jansen. Good morning, Hillary.
Good morning, Council. We have three subdivisions to go over with County Council acting as a subdivision authority today. So we'll see how far we can get in 10 minutes. So the first application that we have for you to consider is subdivision application 2023-0-076. This is for a subdivision of a 50-acre parcel just to the north of the town of Nobleford. There is a bit of background on this, which the committee members that are on the IDP committee with the town of Nobleford are somewhat aware of, and probably council through the letter that is included in our agenda today is also aware of, is that the town of Nobleford is looking to expand their existing industrial park. Their industrial park currently is at capacity. They have no room for growth. And so at the committee meeting held in March of this year in the town of Nobleford, they had gone over an option with regards to potential annexation and their preferred direction as per the intermunicipal development plan, which is in the location in the southwest 1123 west of the 4th, currently owned by the Atkinsons. So in looking at the intermunicipal development plan and after the meeting that we had in March with the committee, it was determined that this 50-acre area would be suitable for annexation because it follows the policies that we have. It does, as Steve will mention in his planning comments for this, it's not a usual subdivision that we see here at the county because usually we see a first parcel out or an 80-acre split. The 50-acre is a bit unusual, but it meets the intent of the direction of growth for the town and what their needs are for the next, say, 20 to 25 years. So with that, I will pass it along to Steve for the rest of the planning comments and the recommendation.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Council. So this first application in front of you, as described, is largely to accommodate a future annexation proposal by Town of Nobleford. You'll see in your agenda package that later there is a letter that was submitted to Council from Nobleford outlining their intent to pursue that. The application in front of you involves private landowner Atkinson's. It was made on behalf of them through the Town of Nobleford, who's ultimately looking to annex in this 50.37 acre area. It is agricultural land, as you can see from the air photo there. There's no improvements on it, and it's adjacent, contiguous to the Town of Nobleford's industrial area up in the northeast. As Hillary mentioned, that 50.37 acre area was discussed between the town and county's intermunicipal development plan committee members earlier in the year and administration. One of the things as part of an annexation is that a municipality can't annex an area or described area and then later subdivide it in order to match the annexation. The province, under the Land and Property Rights Tribunal that deals with the annexation applications and approvals, will only approve an annexation that follows a parcel boundary, a registered land title boundary, and not just an arbitrary area. So in order, I guess, to get to the next step is why this application is in front of you. So based on the discussions, the outcomes of that IDP committee meeting, the town has submitted this application to create the 50.37 acre parcel, which in the meantime would be used for agriculture. If the subdivision is approved by county council here acting as the subdivision authority, then they'll give the green light to Town of Nobleford that they can proceed to the next steps and start preparing an annexation report to share with you and outline their growth and the intent of that as is required under the intermunicipal development plan that you have with the Town of Nobleford. So the reason, as you can see there, Hilary pulled up the map there, the 50.37 acre area and why it's the size and shape it is for two reasons. One, it's kind of aligning with the south boundary on the east side that the town already has, and then up to their kind of north extent of their industrial area. One of the things that the Town of Nobleford has to do, both for the county in accordance with your IDP policies, and for the Land and Property Rights Tribunal, is that in the report they have to justify the area of land, and it has to be based on actual growth projections and land consumption needs and that sort of a thing. Many years back, sometimes under the old municipal government board, they would allow a municipality just to annex a large area and say, go away, but come back for 50 years type of a thing. And sometimes it would include more land area that was actually needed. That kind of practice is not done anymore, and the province will allow successive annexation applications, over a short period of time, over years. They want it based on actual what the growth and needs are and that sort of thing of the community. So with that, that's the reason for the size and kind of the outline of what you see in front of you. But with that, your minimum agricultural parcel size is 80 acres, so at the 50.37 acres would require a parcel size waiver for the minimum parcel size. One of the things with this application itself is that access is provided from the west, which is actually currently a county municipal road, Range Road 23-2. So likely, as a condition on approval here today, that they enter into development agreement with the county to specify the road use and maintenance of that road. Until such time, if an annexation application was successful, then that area would change municipal boundaries and become part of the jurisdiction of the Town of Nobleford in the future. So as part of this application, there were no objections or concerns received on the application. The land is subject to the IDP between the county and Nobleford, which does enable consideration for growth planning. This is an area that was identified in the IDP with the town of Nobleford. Back in, I think it was 2013, I think that plan was done originally.
2012.
2012. That identified this area as a future industrial annexation area for the town. So with that, on that basis, I have recommended to you an approval that's in front of you. With just the basic conditions of the taxes are paid up to date on it, the development agreement is entered into with the county, especially if the road needs to be addressed, and that the final plan of survey be provided based on your approval, if you approve the application in front of you or change it, but that we need that final plan of survey to match any approval in front of you. And as mentioned, the reason for the recommended approval with those conditions is that it does align with the IDP and the tentative agreement with the town of Nobleford to do so.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council at this time? Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sit on the committee with Nobleford here, so we've gone through this at length, discussed it. Really could wrap our head around the justification of the size. Asked quite pointedly why not more, and they could not come up with, in the foreseeable future needing more. Kind of went through everything that Steve's talked about here, and so I wholly support it as it is presented. I'd like to move that subdivision application 2023-0-076 be approved, subject to parcel size waiver being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved the recommendation. Open up for any further questions or discussions. I had Lauren and John. Lauren, if you want to go ahead. Okay, John?
He answered, he spoke basically what I was
Okay, anything further? So Eric has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-076 be approved subject to a parcel size waiver being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And just taking a quick look at the clock, Hillary, why don't we just...
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Floor is yours, guys, if you want to step forward.
Mr. Chairman, Council, thank you again for having us. Staff Sergeant Newman sends his apologies. He's just away, so he asked me to come and just deliver the quarter one kind of report for now. I brought with me Constable Joel Leclerc. He's one of my road supervisors. And of course, I'm Sergeant Dave Maritat. I'm the only operations supervisor for our detachment here. I know that Mike, Staff Sergeant Newman sent all the statistics in and everything. I'm not going to go through them in depth beyond that. There was nothing too alarming on our side that stood out or unusual for us. Did anyone have any questions about the statistics there specifically? No? Okay. Otherwise, we're continuing with our initiatives that we talked about last time, specifically being more visible or involved in the public and going to those events. It wasn't in the first quarter, but the air show was a big success. We had a lot of support there from the county, which was appreciated. And we didn't run into any of the issues we've had in the previous years with traffic overflow or congestion, that kind of thing. So it went pretty smoothly. Outside of that, our staffing issues that we've talked about before, we're actually doing quite well now in terms of our numbers being fully staffed. We have a few people on long-term leave due to medical issues or health issues, but our positions are at least fully staffed at this point. So we're hoping to be able to start using that along with some of our projects that we had planned with SCAN and a couple other units that we wanted to get going for some of our rural crime issues. The one final thing I wanted to touch on was Project Capture. It was a thing that we were going to start trying to roll out for Colehurst initially, but then the RCMP for the province went ahead and engaged Capture for the entire province, and so everybody can use it now. It's something we want to get out, excuse me, something we want to get out into the public and make them aware of it. For those that aren't aware, Capture is an online program that allows anybody to go in, create an account, and register that you have video cameras, whether they're doorbell cameras or cameras on your property. That doesn't give the RCMP or any police access to your cameras. We're not able to view your footage. There's no Big Brother concerns going on there. It just flags to us that, hey, I have a crime on this street, and on that street there's 8 people that have video surveillance that I could then talk to and be like, hey, I know you have a camera. Could you check this surveillance and let us know, did you see anything? It serves as a tool for us to know that there's evidence there that maybe no one would ever have known was there. Not everybody checks their footage every day, of course, so if we have an event and someone's registered on Capture, we can go to you directly and be like, this happened across from your street. Can you take a look? Let us know if you have anything. And it'll be a big help in solving a lot of our rural crime, theft, trespass, those types of issues. One of the big concerns that everybody has is, I don't want the police having access to this information and my cameras. And I just want to emphasize that we don't. It doesn't give us any wireless ability to connect to your camera or to see your footage. It's just a database saying you have cameras. That's it. So we're going to be trying to encourage more people to sign up with that. We're already getting a lot of people being onboarded in Colehurst especially. So the more that do it, the more we'll be aware of certain areas that we could reach out to get that evidence. Yeah, that's the main part there. Other than that, I really don't have a whole lot to discuss. It was just a quick the statistics discussion, and then some of that about Project Capture and our staffing things that I wanted to cover off. Joel, did you have anything else that you can consider?
No.
Fair enough. The only thing, I was saving it a bit for the end in regards to our statistics. The one significant increase that we did see that I wanted to touch on, you'll see that like sexual assaults are up by 300%, but it's important that you look at the raw numbers. It's from 1 to 4. And of course, that's still a concerning increase, but 3 of those are all within one family. So it's not a case of a serial offender out there or someone that's unknown causing harm to others. It's located within one family unit. There was our mischief other. You'll see it's up 575% from last year. So we had 4 mischief others in 2022 and 27 already in 2023. Mischief other is a catch-all kind of category. This will cover things that are people being drunk on property, causing a disturbance, being high, interfering with even people like panhandling outside of businesses, anything that would interfere with your natural enjoyment of property or whatever. Noise complaints, they would all get classified as that. So this isn't damage to property. That is a category on its own. This is a separate thing. So that's why it appears really high, but it doesn't actually reflect an increase in property crime itself. As far as property crime goes, we did have an increase in theft over $5,000 from 2 files to 6 files in the county. This will be, a lot of it is electrical substations and copper wires or high value thefts from people's residences in the case of break and enters. Those are really the major increases that we saw, but again, it's we're still talking about a very small amount of files, from 2 files to 6 files in a year. That's still quite tiny compared to other areas. So overall, the county continues to be a very, very safe place, and we want to stay on top of it, especially as the property crime concerns continue to mount. So hopefully with Project Capture, our use of SCAN, we'll be able to start targeting some of that and driving it down.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. One, how did Stafford Lake go this summer? I understand there was going to be an increased presence.
Right, yes, yeah, so our staff sergeant and Tabor detachment, they partnered up a couple times, and they did patrols out on Stafford Lake with the RCMP boat that's stationed in Tabor, but they they let us use it, and Staff Sergeant Newman and a couple of other guys, they're boat trained, so yeah, they were out on the lake doing some patrols. I think it was well received. I know that a lot of the public were trying to get them to party with them, but of course we can't. So. But apparently it was well received, and I think they were able to do some enforcement as far as impaired goes, and making sure that people aren't boating while impaired. So. Yeah, I think it was a success. It's something we want to keep doing more of. We're trying to actually do more patrols that are not our vehicles. So whether they're foot patrols, bike patrols, the boat, we don't have any ATVs and stuff, but that's kind of been pitched. But just other things for us to be out visible in the public instead of just in our vehicle and you see us drive by. And we're trying to expand outside of that. So
Good, thank you. One other one here, and it's probably just a clarity. That attended Town of Colhurst and Village of Monarch offices to speak to staff and touch base. Was that, is that at Monarch, or what do we have for offices there?
this is just in the
Yeah,
the
page
log-
one.
Page one. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. So this was Staff Sergeant Newman. I know he went around to all the municipalities or communities in our area, and he was just popping into wherever he could to meet with if they have a proper town council or the elected leaders, or just even like elders of the community, those sort of things. So I know he was popping in. I wasn't there with him when he went to Monarch, so I'm not sure who he spoke with there.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was watching the news this morning, and they did a vehicle check stop for safety concerns, and they said that 67% of the vehicles they stopped, they had to pull off the road. Is that a fairly common number when you do your check stops too?
Right. I will actually turn this over to Joel. Joel's a collision reconstructionist, or part of that team rather, and so he might have a better insight.
Do you know if it was a commercial check stop, or was it for?
It was commercial.
It was commercial. I can't speak to commercial, but I know that it's a different set of training. It's different acts that they enforce. When they do those check stops, it's not just pull them over, do a quick, like they're getting underneath, looking at things. I think it's pretty common that they find a lot of things when they do those specific check stops, looking for those things. Generally for your everyday vehicle, non-commercial, it's not too often that we're pulling vehicles off the road for safety reasons. They're usually maintained pretty well. A lot of officers will look for that, and if a car looks like it shouldn't be on the road, they'll usually stop it and take a closer look at it. There is where we go under the TSA, the Traffic Safety Act, and there is sections in there that allow us to tow the vehicle if it's not safe to be on the road.
Any other questions from council? Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Sure appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Whenever you like, Hillary, we can keep going.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and to council. I guess we'll carry on with our subdivision applications. So the next subdivision application that we have is 2023-0-089. This particular parcel is located just to the north of the town of Colhurst. Currently, oh, I should bring up my map, sorry. Let's see where it's located. Currently, there are 5 titled properties in this that are being handled in this particular application. Their desire is to consolidate and realign the parcels to address some encroachment issues as well as some title issues that they have on the property. And so they have sent a proposal to go from 5 to 3 parcels, as noted in the agenda package. The three titles would be 0.72, 0.83, and 14.66 acres in size. And with that, there are some considerations with this one, but I will let Steve go through the comments and the recommendation.
Yes, this next application in front of you is not to create additional lots or that type of subdivision, but it's to realign the existing boundaries and areas of the parcels. And in the end, there'll be a reduction from 5 current titles down to 3 titles in the end. These titles in this area, this is a very old historic area with these acreages along the road there north of Colhurst. The main, I guess, purpose of the application is to change those boundaries to address some encroachment issues with some of the improvements that are on the land there. As you can see in some of the sketches, and it was also visible in the air photo that Hillary had up earlier, that there's, I guess, kind of 2 main components. And I'll start with the very southeast parcel in the corner, which is proposed lot 9. There's an existing residence in that southeast corner. It has a landscape yard, a dwelling there. The 2 issues with this one is that you can see is that the house itself encroaches over the north property line to the north parcel. It is the same landowner that owns both parcels, but his house straddles over the 2 separate titles property line. And then as well, where kind of the driveway comes in to the north there, and there's a trees there where Hillary's at, is the septic system that's on site there, as well encroaches over to the west across the property line into that driveway tree area. So it's not fully contained within the parcel, which is required under the provincial sewage, private on-site sewage regulations. So the first component is to bump that parcel to a little bit to the north and to the west there, following kind of the tree line there along the driveway, so that those encroachment issues are ratified on that side. The second component is to consolidate together 3 titles for the separate west yard. As you can see where those white lines are, there's on the east and west, there's 2 narrow parcels, and in the middle where the dwelling is, there's a little bit of a wider middle parcel there. They're all 3 separate titles currently. That's all one landowner has all 3, which is the son and daughter-in-law of the owner in the southeast. So the other component is to consolidate all those together to create one larger single title instead of having the 3 separate there for that yard. And then also bump it a little bit to the north there as well. There's a fence at the north end, and it as part of the yard there, it's just to capture that as well and have one inclusive yard parcel there for how they presently use the yard and with the improvements that are present on there. Overall, that'll mean a slight reduction in the north parcel, which is the larger 15.06 acre title on the north side, is where the land is coming from to accommodate for these encroachments and these enlargements of the titles. So overall, servicing provisions will be unaffected with the reconfiguration in the sense that water, the sewer, everything will be the same, with the exception that it will bring into compliance with the provincial regulations of the east dwellings septic system, as it will be fully contained within its own title instead of an encroachment present. Access to all the lots is from the south. It's from the town of Colhurst Municipal Road, which is known as 55th Avenue. One of the things we will note with this application is that the current driveway access for the north parcel, which will be reduced in size to 14.66 acres, is currently 20 meters in width, and with the adjustments here due to the septic system and the trees and that sort of stuff, it will be reduced down to approximately 10.12 meters in width, which is sufficient for private access and exceeds the county standards for the width that's required for a driveway. Just one thing to note is that if that north piece was ever to be subdivided, we would want a proper 20-meter wide road there, which they currently couldn't provide. That north piece is landlocked in a sense, other than this access due to their parcels on the east-west and on the north side, and the CPR right away on the north side. However, the applicants themselves are concerned with that. They have no plans to subdivide that north piece in accordance with the IDP that the county does have with the town of Coors. They would be required to do an area structure plan for any further subdivision in this area, or if they want to subdivide that larger 14.6 acre remnant piece. So they would have to address it at that time and allow for proper road access in there. Otherwise, they likely couldn't be able to subdivide. So part of the referral on this one and the circulation out, there was no objections or concerns received. The town of Colehurst responded to the application, and they had no concerns or objections to the proposal. The land is in with, as mentioned, the county and the Colehurst IDP area. It's in what we call Planning Area 2. We do have policies that allow for reconfiguration of titles, provide no additional lots are created, so it does align with that. As well, your land use bylaw has subdivision criteria that allows for the reconfigurations when no additional titles are created, and as mentioned, in this case, we're reducing titles from 3 down to 2. I will mention that the existing lots currently don't meet your 2 acre minimum that you would have for private septic, but these are historic lots, and you're not going smaller than that. Anything with the consolidation and realignment, the titles are actually getting bigger. They won't obviously meet the 2 acres, but they'll be enlarged from what they currently are at, which in a sense makes it better from that point. But due to the historic nature of these, they are deficient to grade to begin with. So with that, and those policies and no objections received, since I sent the agenda package out to you, we did hear from ATCO Pipelines who have no concerns, and the LNAD as well, who had, I guess, changed their position from the earlier comments they sent there, allowing the people to keep their water rights. So with that, I have recommended approval to you with the conditions in front of you there. That the taxes are paid up to date, development agreements enter into if the county requests it. We need a final plan with the consolidation shown so that there are only 3 titles in the end and the reduction from the 5. That the final plan be submitted that matches any approval you grant here. When I sent the package out, I had the easement condition on there, but none of the utility companies require any easements now. So with that, I recommend approval to you with those conditions.
Thank you very much, Steve. I turn it back to council. Any questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I'm looking at the larger overview of this parcel, is it accurate that the rail line actually intersects a small part on the top?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Did you have anything else, John?
I was just gonna move to adopt the subdivision, if that's all right.
I think, Lauren, do you have a comment, Lauren?
Oh,
Just 2 questions, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the railroad piece that's cut off, does it have any access, legal access?
Currently, it would not have any legal access. It's a remnant old title from probably the before the rail line would have gone through there, so they didn't think of those things back in the early 1900s, so it remains as is.
So it's what we call a title in 2 parts. It's a legal title in 2 parts, which land titles allows.
And the reason I ask you that, then it couldn't technically be subdivided without legal access, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it has to remain as is.
So does that mean for the entire parcel, or just the portion of the parcel?
So as Steve mentioned, through the chair to Councillor Hickey, if they were ever to want to subdivide or sever off that piece, unless they were consolidating it with one of the titles to the north, so that it would, be tied to one of those titles, they would have to do an area structure plan. But if the landowner to the north was a willing party, they could put an application to consolidate that title to the one to the north, thereby kind of starting, like the reconfiguration of titles, starting with 2 titles and ending with 2 titles. That would be an option for them to consider.
Thank you.
But any proposal like that would have to come back to you guys
Yeah.
as the subdivision authority. It's not automatic where they can just do it. They'd have to come back to you for that request.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your comment on the LNID, what is their new conditions going to be?
It's just to remain as the situation as it currently is.
Okay, so it's gonna be, the above, it's gonna be approved and not all the lists and the fees and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's in there for your information purposes, but the irrigation district acts under the Irrigation Act and does their own conditions and things, so it's there. They have to sign a consent before we can send anything to land titles, so the applicant always has to deal with the irrigation district and satisfy them. And then if they do, the irrigation district sends us a consent saying, yeah, we consent to that. We can't send anything to land titles until we see that. But they deal all privately with the irrigation district on that. But I just got an email in that said LNAD was, the board had changed their stance or whatever and gave them relief or whatever, that they could just keep it as is kind of thing, so.
Good. Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given all that, I'd like to move that subdivision application 2023-0-089 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? John has moved the subdivision application 2023-0-089 be approved subject to the conditions outlined in the draft resolution. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hillary. And moving down to item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the last subdivision for today. This is similar in nature to the last one in that it's more of a lot line adjustment. They're not creating any new titles. This particular application is once again located to the north of the town of Colehurst. This parcel does gain access off of Township Road 9-4, otherwise known as the Kip Highway. The application is to enlarge the existing title, the skinny title you see next to the irrigation canal, to accommodate kind of an encroachment of a driveway and to resolve that particular issue between 2 landowners. So with that, I will pass off to Steve for the planning comments and the recommendation.
As Mr. Chair, this application is subdivision that was also processed under the reconfiguration of titles policy similar to the last one. In this case, we're really doing a boundary realignment in a sense of the shared the shared property boundary between them and doing a land swap. It's technically subdividing a 0.99 acre strip of land, approximately 50 feet wide by 860 feet long, from the larger west parcel and consolidating it over to that long, narrow, triangular parcel next to the irrigation canal to the east, which contains 3.15 acres to enlarge it. Just a little background here, that odd triangular parcel there was created not by the county, but back in 1985 by the Alberta Planning Board upon an appeal as a cutoff parcel. It was originally, the county was not supportive of it at that time due to not having access. The landowner had applied as a cutoff parcel between the quarter section line there and the canal. Upon appeal, the Alberta Planning Board granted approval of it. The legislation was a little bit different back then, and they imposed a condition which the LND had to actually adhere to, which they don't have to do anymore to change the legislation, but that to provide easement for access along part of the canal there, which is how they got their access into the parcel. As well, just by the way the canal lines up at the Kip Road there, and it's not quite wide enough. The landowner is forced physically to go over, so he encroaches onto the neighbors to the west parcel in order to cross to get access to the Kip Road there. So the two adjacent landowners there have been talking, and they've made agreement amongst themselves that the owner of the larger parcel, the 35 acres, would sell them this 50-foot long strip there to consolidate over to the smaller East Title, so that they can use that area to properly incorporate their driveway and have it be fully contained within their own parcel to provide both physical and legal access up to the Kip Road. So by doing that, it will solve this access situation, which is by easement only currently, but it also, because the easement's not sufficient, there's an encroachment present. So with this application, it is, just like the last one, situated within the IDP area with the town of Cohors. That IDP allows for these types of reconfigurations of properties with no new titles created. This area, there is area structure plan also in place as part of the IDP with the town of Cohors. That 35 acres is an area that could be subdivided further for light industrial use, commercial type of use in the county. They'd have to provide an area structure plan to do that. This area is large enough at the 35 acres that this 50-foot strip won't impede any future planning or that sort of thing for this area up there. So one of the things as well with this application is that must be dealt with if an approval is given is the municipal reserve situation. When the smaller 3.15 acres created back then, they had to pay municipal reserve at that time, back in 1985. The 35 acre parcel has a deferred reserve caveat on title, meaning when that parcel was, which is largely the remnant of some other activities gone on there, the county hasn't taken any reserve on that yet. They're saving it to the future, such as time when an area structure might come, they may do multiple lots up there. Then it's more advantageous for the county to take it at that time, obviously because you get more money. It's at its highest, best value at the time to do that before it's fully built out. So to clean up here and to make everything match, any approval would require that they pay the municipal reserve on the 0.99 acres that's coming off the 35 acre title, which is being consolidated through 3.15. So then that enlarged parcel will have the reserve paid and up to date, and then we'll adjust the deferred reserve caveat on the remnant, which would be approximately 35.01 acre, and put a new deferred reserve caveat on there and that resulting amount, so that the county will save that for the county for the future. As mentioned, this area is identified as the area that could be subdivided for non-agricultural use if somebody came forward in the future plan to do so. So we'll do an adjustment on the MR in order for everything to match on that. That value came in at $17,000 per acre, which on a 50-foot strip there by 860 is approximately $1,683. It's not a lot, but a little bit there that to clean it up. So with this proposal being in conformity with the IDP of the town of Cohors, Dizal, with your property boundary adjustment and reconfigurations of title subdivision policies, I have recommended an approval to you. That would be on the basis that that reserve adjustment is made and that municipal reserve is paid on the 0.99 acres to the county. And then the conditions that taxes are paid up to date, development agreement is entered into. And then that two plans, one of the surveyed final plan to create the adjusted lot, and as well that would involve a plan of consolidation so that title can't be further subdivided without coming back to you for subdivision approval. And that any easements by the utility companies be provided. Now, since I sent the agenda package out to you, I have heard from Fortis, who doesn't require anything And we've also heard, in addition to the LMAD, which has no concerns, it's just their standard endorsement fee. And Alberta Health has responded, they had no concerns or issues with it. So on that basis, I've recommend approval to you with those conditions and then municipal reserve payment.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council? Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions really. It seems pretty straightforward. I think it's both landowners are in agreement and everything's laid out for that. So I'd like to move that subdivision application number 2023-0-098 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the little square that's over there called A, and then I can see just 273 on the map up there. Is that the old anhydrous?
That's correct.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, Mark has moved the recommendation that subdivision application 2023-0-098 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you okay with just continuing down, Hillary?
Am I next? Yes.
Okay, we can move in our agendas then down to F. Department reports, F1, Municipal Development and Infrastructure, F1.1, Bylaw 23-020, Development Authority Bylaw. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in light of recent staffing changes this summer, I did a review of the Development Authority bylaw that we currently had on file and realized that it was somewhat out of date, even prior to this occurring, and determined that we should update that particular bylaw just to, so there's some clarity with regards to the Development Authority and how Council sees the Development Authority functioning. The current Development Authority bylaw, being Bylaw 1392, was approved in February 8th, 2013, which was just before I started with the county. Since that time, the positions related to the Development Authority have evolved, and an amendment is required to ensure that the Development Authority is up to date. When the bylaw was originally approved, there was a Senior Planner Development Officer role and a Director of Community Services role that would fulfill the Development Authority, the role of the Development Authority. With the changes in positions, we currently have myself being the Supervisor of Planning and Development, and we have the Development Planner being Nate Hill, who fulfill the role of the Development Authority for the county. The proposed bylaw that I have created would clearly address who acts in the capacity of the Development Authority for the county. Just in case there's any discrepancies, somebody notes that, wait a minute, those positions have changed. This would impact that, not using names specifically, but the positions that we have in the county. So I have included in your agenda package the original bylaw, and then the revised bylaw, and the changes there that we have. And I think Candace kindly made all those changes for me in there. So with that, I have recommended that County Council approve all 3 readings of this particular bylaw if they see fit. Some options, if County Council wants, they could amend that list of persons or positions that would be fit the Development Authority. But in discussions with the CAO, he felt that those were sufficient, and that's currently what we practice. So I'll put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Awesome. Thank you, Hillary. Any questions from council? Claus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that bylaw 23-020 be read for the first time.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved that bylaw 23-020 be read for a first time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 23-020 be read a second time.
Thank you, John. John has moved that bylaw 23-020 be read for a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And consideration of third reading. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move that the county council proceed to consideration of third reading of bylaw 23-020.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the county council proceeds to consideration of third reading of bylaw 23-020. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And third reading. Lauren?
I would move third reading of bylaw 23.
Lauren has moved that bylaw 23-020 be read for a third time. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Hillary. With that, that brings us to 9:51 this morning. We do have a 10 o'clock delegation, so why don't we take a short recess and we will reconvene at 10 o'clock for our Iron Springs Water Co-op delegation. We can call our meeting back to order at 10:01 a.m. this morning. We'll move in our agenda under delegations. Item number 2, we have Springs Water Co-op, and I would turn the floor over to you, gentlemen. Please feel free to introduce yourselves, and like I said, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to kind of sit in on your meeting. I'm Tony Ankerman, president of the Iron Springs Water Co-op, and
Harvey Van Scotthurst.
And one of our, I guess our agenda item was, back in January, the county had implemented a $1,000 fee on, per month on the co-op there. We are just trying to get an idea of the breakdown of costs associated, and trying to get that kind of figured out there a little bit more so, because there's a lot of stuff that is, when we look back in the bylaws there, that are offered to Turin, Diamond City, Shaughnessy, and a lot of these services are not really applying to Iron Springs. So we're just looking for a little bit of, I guess, clarification on the fees there.
Okay. I would throw to you, CAO Beck, and you.
Yeah, so our Director of Public Operations, Jeremy Wixon, I'll defer to him to speak to this. I know he's been working with the water co-ops directly on the fee structure, so maybe I'll let Jeremy provide a bit of background and we can get to more detail.
Okay. So this is a bit of This was a bit of an item of discovery. One of the things that I identified after the previous utility supervisor retired was that Iron Springs was playing, in comparison to other other hamlets, they were paying just the consumption rate for water and not paying any kind of base rate similar to other hamlets. The other hamlets right now are set at, as of 2023 in the utility rate bylaw, they're set at $44.24 as a flat monthly rate. That covers off on some of our operational costs as far as staffing needs and whatnot for providing water distribution to each of these areas. So when I reviewed Iron Springs, the one thing I did look at is, like I said, we charge a flat rate for consumption across the board to all hamlets. Every hamlet has the same rate for both consumption and for the flat water rate. Iron Springs did not have a charge currently in place for any kind of distribution work. So I looked at a 5-year cost evaluation, and I did this in 2022 originally. And on my flat cost evaluation, I found the 5-year average for costs attributed to the distribution portion in Picture Butte, or in Iron Springs, was roughly about $12,000 a year. And that's when I made a recommendation to council to essentially put a flat rate fee essentially in place. The Iron Springs Water Association is very unique in the fact that we don't own any of the infrastructure in Iron Springs except for we own the reservoir, which currently we just had evaluated because it was identified within our AM program for an upgrade. What were we talking on that number? I think we were talking $550,000 potentially for our replacement costs on the reservoir, as well as it requires some maintenance work. That is specifically in place essentially to service this distribution system. So there is some asset management considerations in place for this as well. But yes, as far as the rates, and I have detailed and I've spoken with both Tony and Harvey as to where that distribution cost came from and why we're essentially looking to move to a base rate. With other organizations such as the North and South Co-ops, we have service agreements in place. That was a proposal that was put forward as well.
Is there anything, Cole?
No, I mean, Jeremy and I have talked about this, and I support the approach where we need to, we have infrastructure that we have to plan for replacement and servicing. As this one's a little bit unique because of the asset considerations, I support the flat rate. I think it's more of a, it's not a cost recovery, it's nothing like that. It's more of a looking forward type approach to this. So by no means, we talked about it. It's not like we want to go back and back charge Iron Springs for any lost contributions that we may have been charging other hamlets under their fee structure. We're really looking at this moving forward to be able to service their Iron Springs infrastructure and our infrastructure to provide and ensure potable water continuity essentially in the future.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments in terms of aging infrastructure, and this is something that we of council has been discussing, and it's something that has gone onto our administration's radar screen. And just making sure that we, as the county, are being good stewards of our ratepayers, and making sure that as things age, that there's money being put aside to actually pay for it when it needs to be replaced, because the other option for that is when it needs to be replaced, doing something from the effect that either we got to borrow the money, well, we have to borrow the money, but then the recovery of it becomes a problem where local improvement levies may have to be put into place for the people that actually use it. So, you know, from the standpoint of just easing into this and understanding that part of the bigger picture is making sure that we're taking care of the future of all of the residents. There has to be something put into place to make sure that operations are covered and that a little bit of money is set aside. And I think that behooves any of us in terms of organizations to make sure we do that so that there is some long-term viability. That's one comment. The other comment is that, well, I guess the question is, what is your ask of us today?
Where part of our concern is all the fees that are, let's say, being associated to that water station are also generates revenue for the county also. And that's, I guess, what we're kind of looking at is there's a lot that is being done, let's say, at this water station, whether it be testing, servicing, maintenance, whatever, but it doesn't just apply to us. This is a very well-used water station. I've talked to a lot of people. They really like this water station. I don't know how they can make the claim, but they say water is better coming out of here, but I don't know. So that's where we're kind of looking at, as we are now subsidizing the water station, and then the revenue from that is what the county is also now receiving. So that's where we're kind of, our little bit of our concern is that way there.
Go ahead, John.
Can I make a suggestion? We've formed, and you guys are involved in, we had the discussion about the Water Liaison Committee. These talks are more sort of operational aspects of things, and you know, potentially that would be a better avenue to sort of sit down and have those fulsome discussions about, okay, this is, you know, and try to get down into the weeds a little bit, whereas this venue is more about direction and less about operations. Would that be something you guys would be willing to defer to that committee?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine with that, as long as, again, you know, there's conclusions that can come forward from it there, so.
Claus, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You were talking about the water station there, and the money that the people put in to get the water, because I assume they have to put in a certain amount of money per gallon or whatever it is. Does that go, and maybe talk to operations for that, or does that go to the maintenance of that system?
All costs basically cover the cost of running the system, all operational costs involved with that, as well as putting away a reserve amount for each of these truck fill stations.
And what is the amount that is put away right now for the system?
I can't speak specifically to that because I am still working through the process of analyzing all of those assets. At this time, as I have spoken to council with before, we are definitely in an infrastructure deficit as far as what our rates are.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just another question, Jeremy. Are there other hamlets in our county that have water fill stations, you know, in their jurisdiction or area? So that would be similar to what Iron Springs has?
We have water or truck fill stations. We have one in Colehurst. We have one in Monarch. We have one just on Township Road 92 on just the east edge of the city of Lethbridge, as well as Diamond City. Shaughnessy does not have one. I'm just looking up the total numbers here as far as what we're putting through each of these truck fill stations, because we monitor essentially what revenue is essentially generated by those
Right.
on an ongoing basis.
So there
are several different truck fill stations.
So they'd be handled the same way, like with the proposal, or the way Iron Springs looked after now. That's how these other
Correct.
hamlets are being charged also. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from council? Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the larger concerns that is, and I completely support John's approach that, hey, this is not a council operation, it's an operational thing, but I still want to put it out there, is the ownership of the infrastructure in the hamlet, and how is that being recognized, and how are they being, you could say, reimbursed for it, or getting charged a similar rate to other hamlets. And I think that's a significant concern on recognizing that, hey, that's not our infrastructure, we don't have to maintain it. We can come up with lots of scenarios for future that, you know, if it fails, who's responsible, all those kind of things. But I want that out there, that gets recognized, and then definitely defer it to our committee. That's why the committee was to be set up and dealt with.
Anything else from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are you kind of suggesting that this committee would now include Iron Springs co-op along with the north and south?
We've already got it there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anything in closing, Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say the only other thing in preparation for that, and Councillor Sayers and I did discuss scheduling our first meeting following the larger forum. So we'll be looking to do that early this fall. I believe that there's probably just some points of clarification and misconceptions around subsidization of infrastructure. I actually, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to speak to it. Jeremy and I did review some of this, and I think it's possibly the opposite, where some of the other hamlets have been subsidizing, you know, our contributions or our infrastructure components towards Iron Springs. And so all I would suggest is if you can work directly with Jeremy to try and get some of that information even before that meeting that we have this fall, it may make that forum more productive for those discussions. So I think there's probably some points of clarification that administration needs to work with the Iron Springs Water Co-op on ahead of that. So yeah, if you're okay with that, connecting directly with Jeremy Wixon, we'll go through it. I'm willing to meet there too. Let's go through the numbers, and then we'll reconvene at that forum for further discussion. And then if there's something that needs to come back to council, we can bring it back after that.
Anything further from council? Thank you very much for coming in today, guys. I'm sure that you would have liked to come and you know, maybe clear this up a little further, but just like as John and Eric and others have attested to, I think that is the best forum going forward, is to try and work through that avenue, through that liaison committee. I think there is an opportunity to have some more fulsome discussions that are, you know, with a little more information in front of us. And but I do want to stress, you know, I admit that you know, the role I play within this, and I would acknowledge that maybe the co-ops haven't always felt heard, and I want to stress to you that it is important that we do hear you, and that we do work with you to find solutions, because at the end of the day, we both need this to work, and we both need it to work in a, you know, financially prudent way. So thank you for coming in, and we look forward to working with you on this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You want to go next, Evan, or is that you? we can move in our agendas to item F1, Municipal Development and Infrastructure, F1.2, Bridge File 79589, Request for Budget Increase. Devin, of course, how are you today?
Oh, good morning, council. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'll just pull.
Was that a motivation?
I expected it.
Good morning, Devin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm here to discuss Bridge File 79589 with you, just located at the intersection of the Brown Road and Howe Road. And I'll just pull it up on the map here so you gentlemen can see where this bridge file is located. So you can see SMRID's canal running parallel to the Howe Road, and this is the Brown Road, of course, where the bridge file is located. So it was scheduled for a replacement in 23/24 with a project budget of $300,000. At the time of estimation, we thought we could install two 2.5-meter culverts to accommodate the flows, but it was discovered during the design process that we actually need two 2.7-meter diameter culverts to accommodate the flows in that particular canal. As well, during the design process, I directed the engineer to look at polymer-coated culverts and look at the cost benefit of applying a polymer to the galvanized corrugated steel pipe. That analysis indicated that for an additional $30,000, we can get about an extra 25-year life out of that pipe. It's a ethylene acrylic acid that's applied to the pipe. It's about 10 millimeters thick, and it has really good resistance to abrasion and pHs in the soils. So we thought because we get that additional life expectancy from that type of coating, it would be prudent for us to go forward with that type of culvert install for this project. And most likely going forward, we're going to be looking at that a lot harder on a lot more of our bridge files, depending on, of course, if the irrigation district's plans to backfill those canals in a certain amount of time. We'll look at those scenarios as well. With that, I am requesting an increase, obviously, from the budget from $300,000 to $437,000, which is an increase of $137,000. That would need to come from the Bridges and Paved Roads Reserve, which, Jennifer, do you happen to know the bill? Thank you very much. For this year? Yeah, so it's got about $5 million balance currently, but we have to take out some of that just for some projects that are ongoing, but there is enough in that budget to cover this increase. So my recommendation to council is that county council approve an additional $137,000 from the Bridges and Paved Roads Reserve for a total project cost of $437,000.
Thank you, Devin. I'll open it up to council. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously, we've got an extra $104,000 worth of cost overruns on that, or estimated cost overruns over and above the change in design of the culverts.
Yeah, so the change in design of the culverts was about a $60,000 increase, $30,000 per pipe, and then $30,000 for the polymer coated. So that resulted in about a $90,000 increase to the project. And yeah, the $300,000 was a bit underestimated at the time as well.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Klaus.
So, when this first, when you first started with this one, that, it was necessary to make some changes here. The engineer, did they not do their math on the flow rate or the flow that would go through the culverts?
So myself and Cole, not that Cole, my Cole Bodnarak,
Yeah.
tried to determine what size pipes were required. This is prior to getting an engineer involved. So we look at other bridge files in the area, try and determine the proper size of pipe. We thought 2.5-meter pipes would be good enough, but then we got the engineer involved and they said no, based on the flows. And they talk with SMRID and ensure that they give us the updated information. They determined that that was just a bit too small. 2.7-meter pipes were required to handle those flows.
Okay, and the other question is, the other ones would probably have lasted, lifespan would have been 50 years, and this would be 50 to 75. How do you get those years in there, the extra years? Is that recommended, or is that how do you come about those figures?
It's straight from the manufacturer. So Armtech, who manufactures a lot of these culverts, depending on where you are, it will depend on the life cycle, the pH in the soils, and if you're, let's say, in mountainous terrain and there's a lot of runoff and aggregate flows through those culverts, that's abrasive. We're probably on the higher end of those life cycles because our pHs are around 7 to 8 in the county, and we don't have aggregate flowing through our pipes. So we'll go on the higher end usually of those estimates. Armtech is saying up to 100 years on polymer coated. I'm going a little bit conservative and saying 75. But with typical galvanized CSPs, we can see 50 years out of some of those easily.
But you have experience with the galvanized, I mean, that.
Oh, yes, it's very common, yeah.
Yeah.
The polymer coated is a little bit newer, and it's, like I said, something I want to explore more because it does seem to have quite a bit better useful life for a minimal additional funds required.
And with the new pipe, a lot of us are probably not gonna be around anymore, maybe Eric, but I mean, that was the only one that probably put in at that time.
You're good now? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would move for, I would move for bridge file 79589 that the additional $137,000 from bridges and paved roads reserved be added to the project for a total cost of $437,000.
Thank you, Lauren. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As always with a new project, new product, how's our warranty on this if we're gonna try something new? Do we got a 50-year warranty or something?
I would have to look into the warranty on the coating itself. I know the contractor has a warranty on that, but I don't know off the top of my head what the warranty is on that coating. But I know that if it becomes damaged, we can cover it with a similar polymer product and repair it. Similar to if your galvanization comes off a pipe, you can reapply that zinc coating.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lauren has moved the recommendation for county council to approve an additional $137,000 from the Bridges and Paved Roads Reserve for a total project cost of $437,000 on bridge file 79589. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you, council.
We can. We move down, F2, Corporate Services, F2.1, 2024 Budget Presentation Schedule, and we have Jennifer Place, our Director of Finance Administration. Is that changed too? Did I get that wrong? Is it Corporate Services? Director of Corporate Services.
That's fine, thank you.
That sounds okay.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Council. So the first item here is, as mentioned, the 2024 Budget Presentation Schedule. As Council is aware, the Municipal Government Act stipulates that Council must adopt an operating and capital budget each calendar year. We do 3 and 5 year budget projections, but at least 1 year has to be approved as per the Municipal Government Act. Administration, senior leadership team in particular, has already started the budget process on our end with regards to capital budgets that are due to me next week, as a friendly reminder. And operating has been sent out for review, and we're setting up some meetings. So this is just the proposed budget schedule for the council portion of the meetings. I'll just bring it up here on the screen. So these dates, of course, are what we're looking at to present. So the budget documents will be distributed to council by the 21st of November, with the day 1 and day 2 taking place November 28th and 29th. A budget review on December 5th, if required, with any direction or proposed changes council may like to see implemented. A tentative second review, if that's required, on the 12th, where ideally approval of the operating and capital budget on the last meeting of the year, which is December 21st. And if council isn't prepared to approve a final budget at that time, an interim budget would at least need to be approved to get us into the new year. And then the first regular meeting in January, I don't think we have the dates set just yet, is when we would bring it back if required. So that's what we're looking at this time. I did speak with the executive administrator, Candace, to make sure that these dates didn't bump up against any other conferences or meetings that council is involved in, but even if we do set this schedule and some changes need to be made, of course, we can accommodate that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Any questions, comments from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
I can't make the 29th, but
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's something we want to look at now and adjust those dates, or we could do them Monday, Tuesday, I think, if that works better. I'm fairly flexible with the schedule.
Do any of those dates work, Lauren?
The Monday, Tuesday, so the 27th and 28th? Okay.
Is that agreeable, council? Okay.
So if that is the motion of council, then I'll just have Candace send out meeting invites to everybody
'Kay.
following this.
John, go ahead. I would ask that, yeah.
I did put a recommendation there. It might be nice to have it as they are open council.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, John.
I happily move that county council approve the 2024 budget presentation schedule as amended.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that county council approve the 2024 budget presentation schedule as amended. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Moving down, F2.2, 2023 business tax adjustment, or sorry, F2.2, 2023 business tax adjustments.
Thank you. So as per the business tax adjustment policy number 165, some business tax adjustment requests have been submitted to the county for the 2023 levies. The assessors reviewed the requests, and a summary has been included for council's consideration. This year's total adjustment would be $6,212.50, and the total levy for the business tax was $1,565,558.20. At this time, the recommendation made by administration is that the request as presented in the total amount of the $6,200 and change be approved. Just for a little bit of background further down, the actual requests coming in have reduced. In the first year of business tax, which was in 2019, we received 19, and since then it has gradually gone down. Some of that is due to, I think, just more familiarity on administration's end of the requirements, and working with the feedlots and producers in the county. So identifying that a lot of those that came in earlier, those larger numbers, were locations that weren't fully developed and couldn't handle their full numbers by NRCB. So the assessor has, continued to monitor those and see where the development is at, rather than having these adjustments come through that are pretty straightforward. So the three that are before you, oh, that's pretty small. I'll just enlarge because it's probably quite small on your screen as well. Two of them are two different tax rolls, but it's the same customer, and the first one is a feeder. So they've reduced their cattle numbers in the first case, as you can see, from their permitted capacity of 650 to their sworn capacity of 325. The second two, they had just purchased, I put feedlot, but it is sheep and rams and feeders, so I don't know if it's still called a feedlot, but, and they just purchased it in January, so they weren't at full capacity in 2023, so that is why they made their request. So as you can see, the most significant one, of course, is on the sheep feeders. They have a capacity of over 28,000. Their sworn capacity is that they filled it with 10,000 for the year, so that was a $4,580 difference. All of these requests are below the 85% threshold, so within the policy, if it's 85% or higher, that adjustment is so minimal that we're not really accepting them. So it's below that, so we're satisfied with these adjustment recommendations.
Thank you, Jen. I'd open it up to council for any questions or any further discussion. Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that County Council approve the 2023 business tax adjustment request as presented in total of the amount of $6,212.50.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Claus has moved that County Council approve the 2023 business tax adjustment request as presented in the total amount of $6,212.50. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Now we have 3 tax penalty waiver requests before us. We can start with item F 2.3, tax penalty waiver request, roll 42020000. Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So each of these requests is quite unique. Administration, however, in all cases, has recommended that they not be waived just to follow the requirements of the bylaw. But as per the Municipal Government Act, Council does have the authority to cancel or reduce tax arrears, cancel or refund all or any part of a tax, and defer the collection of a tax. So the first one is a request of tax penalty waiver in the amount of $49.95. The individual who is making the request indicated that they had recently purchased the property in June of 2023, and the notices were sent out in early June. It is indicated that he did not receive a notice in time for the July 31st due date. Well, Land Titles has been a little bit behind in getting information to municipalities or updated. The tax clerk did identify that this tax change came through on July 21st, and a letter was then sent, as is attached within the agenda, stating that taxes are due July 31st. And I believe there was also a tax certificate issued, but it was prior to the taxes being levied. So it probably didn't include any amounts on there. Therefore, the individual obviously contacted the county and was told that a 5% penalty had been applied to the 2023 levy and is now looking for a waiver of the $49.95. I did include the request letter as well as the county letter.
Thank you, Jen. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When a property is transferring from one to another, the lawyers will request a tax certification from the county, which will show what the taxes are actually going to be for the year, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
In most cases, yes. And in this case, I believe that was done, but it was made prior to the taxes being levied. So there wasn't an outstanding balance on that tax certificate. We just would have indicated that, our tax due date is July 31st.
Right, yeah, and I understand that it wouldn't show that there was an outstanding balance because it was done before the taxes were levied, but it would show that the taxes are going to be owed and what they would be owed, what the amount would be owed, right?
It wouldn't show what the amount would be owed, no, not at that time, because that doesn't get applied to a tax certificate until it's actually levied or there's an outstanding balance.
Okay, so how does a lawyer then do a tax adjustment on the sale of a property?
That you would use, I don't know what lawyers do, but my
fair.
guess is from my own experiences, they would probably do some adjustment based on the previous year's taxes and, from January to May or whatever date the property was purchased, they would adjust for that portion based on previous year. That's my guess. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is this an acreage or is it a larger piece of land?
I apologize, I'm not sure where it's located.
This one was in Shaughnessy.
Did it say that?
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause
Go
you
ahead, John.
Oh,
Sorry, Lauren. Sorry, Lauren. Yeah.
No, it's okay, because you don't have to pay, the previous owner on farmland doesn't have to pay the taxes up to date. That's the responsibility of whoever buys it for that year. On acreages, it's the exact opposite in houses.
Sorry, John, did you?
Yeah, I would just like to move the county council not waive the tax penalty in the amount of $49.95 as requested for tax roll number 4202000. I think that's all.
Thank you, John. John has moved a recommendation that county council will not waive tax penalties in the amount of $49.95 as requested for tax roll 42020000. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's nice to put out there that we're not going to, or that you would like to not accept that. However, I still don't hear any rationale other than that we feel that the client was responsible. And that can be fair. I actually was in a very similar situation in purchase of a property that closed right around tax time. And it was cumbersome, actually. No, that's maybe not fair, but I still had to go through a bunch of work to go find it, and it's only because I have other properties in town. So I can totally empathize with it. It is a struggle, but I do believe it is the owner's responsibility or on their lawyer. So it is it's our responsibility to go after it, and based on that, I will support not waiving the penalties.
Any other comments? Go ahead, John.
And I'm sorry, I apologize, maybe I should have given some rationale behind that. When a property is transferred, and we just went through this ourselves, when you sit down with the lawyer, a good prudent lawyer will tell you how much your taxes are owed and the tax date of when they're owed, which if you're paying attention during the final closing documents and you're signing, your lawyer will advise you that the taxes are going to be due, and if they're not paid within a certain period of time, that there would be a penalty assessed. So, I think a reasonable person purchasing a property should know that, or ought to have known that, and made steps to be proactive to save themselves the $50 by calling the county ahead of time and say, hey, I just bought this property, how much am I going to be owed? So that would be my rationale behind it.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation the county council not waive tax penalties in the amount of $49.95 as requested for tax roll 42020000. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We can move down our second waiver request for F 2.4, tax penalty waiver request, the Hutterian Brethren Church of Turin. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, I've attached a letter with the request that has been submitted for consideration of tax penalty waiver in the amount of $5,849.19, which was received from the Hutterian Brethren Church of Turin. Within the letter, I'll just note it did stipulate that they spoke with Matthew Wells, but I think that was a typo. It was Matthew Patnote at the front office that they actually spoke with. Regardless, this request was made following a phone conversation between Mr. Waldner on behalf of Turin and the customer service representative, as I mentioned, regarding his late payments. It's my understanding that an attempt to make the payments was made electronically or through banking, online banking, and there was I'll call it a clerical error in the sense that Mr. Waldron or whoever was processing the payments did not finalize the approval of it, and therefore the payment was not received on time. This was not identified until early August, I believe, when he contacted the county, and it was explained to him that obviously there was penalty applied in the amount of just over $5,800 due to the lateness of the payment. So, as mentioned, I do have the letter there for council's review. I'll just leave it in your hands. Again, the recommendation stands from administration to not approve waiver of penalty.
Thank you, Jen. I would open it up to council for any questions or any further discussion on the matter.
I may add, sorry, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, that the taxes have since been paid. They're not still outstanding.
Thank you, Jen. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to my comments on the one prior, it is on the ratepayer, in my opinion, to do full follow-up and ensure that payment is made. And it just has to stay on their responsibility, in my opinion. So I move the recommendation that County Council not waive tax penalties in the amount of $5,849.19 as required for the 125 tax rolls titled to the Hutterian Brethren Church of Turin.
Thank you, Eric. Eric's moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? The motion is the county council not waive tax penalties in the amount of $5,849.19 as requested for the 125 tax rolls titled to the Hutterian Brethren Church of Turin. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought putting the number of titles in there versus listing them all would make for a quicker meeting.
Thank you. And our final tax penalty waiver request, F 2.5, tax penalty waiver request, I3 Energy?
I3, yeah.
I3 Energy.
So again, this one is a bit unique from the former two, and I will get into a bit more details, but this is with regards to an oil and gas related, well, they have several tax rolls actually, to many of their sites that they owe taxes on. So we have again made the recommendation not to waive tax penalties, due to precedents and other things. This particular company is asking for forgiveness of the 5% penalty levied on the outstanding taxes as of July 31st. However, they've indicated that they have full intentions of paying by September 29th prior to the next penalty date and want council's consideration. Ironically, and it was already kind of on the radar, Cole had forwarded me an email from the province with regards to outstanding oil and gas. So as council's probably aware, in March, the province kind of gave direction to the Alberta energy regulators to not approve licensing or transferring of licenses for oil and gas companies that have outstanding taxes within municipalities due to the millions of dollars that are outstanding across the province. So as part of that, municipalities are filling out forms and applications that are listing all of the outstanding oil and gas taxes within their municipality, forwarding that to the province, and it's being recorded by AER and managed. And the exceptions would be in the case of where a payment plan or agreement is in place with the company, or that payment has since been made. So it does require updating. They do have a threshold of $20,000. So if it's under that $20,000 threshold, they're not enforcing, I guess, this license transferring or sales of properties. Regardless of that, I just wanted to give that as a bit of information. I3 is looking for a waiver of their penalty, which is aside from the fact that there's some outstanding balances there. I believe their total, I did do a print off just for council's information. So their total outstanding that they received penalty on is just over $162,000, which is where the $8,117 in penalty comes from. Again, I've made the recommendation not to waive. I just didn't know what council's stance was at this time when it came to oil and gas properties and collection, so I wanted to just put that information out ahead of time with the presentation.
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So of the outstanding, is that all current this year?
That is the current balance, yes.
Okay, all right. And, much along the same line as what Councillor Van Essen has said, and I believe that it is the responsibility of ratepayers to pay their taxes on time, and if not, assess the penalty. So therefore, I would like to move that County Council not waive the tax penalty in the amount of $8,117.20 as requested for the 21 tax rolls titled to I3. Is it I3?
Yeah, please.
I3 Energy.
I think they were formerly known as Frenzine or Firezine and another name.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that County Council not waive tax penalties in the amount of $8,117.20 as requested for the 21 tax rolls titled to I3 Energy. Is there any further discussion? Not, call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
We can move down on our agenda. Under correspondence, we have, oh, sorry. Do you want to do that one? Yes. Why don't we do that, Cole? Why don't we move down? We'll move down to J, new business. Apparently something slipped through the cracks with the agenda. So I'd welcome Hillary to come back up front, and I will throw to you, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there was just one of my agenda reports, a very minor one, got missed on the agenda. It is for the Alberta Development Officers Association. They have declared the week of September 18th to 22nd as Development Officers Week. And so, as per the last few years, we've been doing this just to recognize the those persons who are involved in the Development Authority across the province of Alberta. And so I'll just read the report that I had written so that you can kind of get the context. Alberta Development Officers Association has declared the week of September 18th to 22nd be declared the Alberta Development Officers Week. The ADOA, that's their acronym's purpose, is to provide discussion, communication, and education for development officers and those persons designated as the Development Authority in the province of Alberta. Lethbridge County has been an active member of the ADOA and wishes to participate in this acknowledgement of development officers at the county and within the province of Alberta. Development officers are current planning and development specialists with expertise in current provincial legislation, municipal policies and bylaws, and technical requirements for the physical development within all Alberta communities. In order to acknowledge the importance of our development officers, County Administration requests that County Council proclaim the week of September 18th to 22nd as Development Officers Week within Lethbridge County.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Any discussion from council? Claus?
Yeah, just a question. So this, it's going to be the Development Officers Week, the dates that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So is that only for municipalities, or, because, I mean, how is that going to be known to the rest of the county residents?
It is, all municipalities who are part of the ADOA would have that same proclamation. And typically, we work with our communications coordinator, Maddie, on putting that out on our website, our social media. We've done that the last couple of years to kind of proclaim that development officers, we're here to hopefully make our municipalities better moving forward.
Thank you, Hillary. Go ahead, Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I make a recommendation that as long as we are active members in the ADOA, that council would support our ongoing participation in Development Officers Week so that we don't have to bring this forward annually, and I think it'll better prepare us with our communication strategies and education so we can leverage some of those provincial resources, and it's part of our current communication strategy to help inform county residents on what development officers' services are, what pertains to them. So I think this was just let us be more strategic and prepared in the future.
Okay. Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to make that motion that the county supports the economic development week, and as long as we're members of the association.
That would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried.
Thank you,
Hillary.
Mr. Chairman and Council.
Moving into our correspondence, we have 8 items of correspondence. If I move down to G1, Town of Nobleford. This was spoken to earlier. This is from the desk of Joseph Hutter, the Chief Administrative Officer of the Town of Nobleford. Please accept this letter as notification of the Town of Nobleford's intent to annex land from Lethbridge County. You have all the details in front of you. Is there anything that Hillary or Cole would like to add from administration's perspective?
I reviewed the intermunicipal development plan. I have no concerns, and Hillary and I have discussed at length. So.
Anything on that one from council? If not, item 2, MAD Canada. There's a message yearbook. The MAD message yearbook is designed to raise awareness and funds helping MAD Canada in its mission to stop impaired driving and support victims of this violent crime. The yearbook is distributed to hundreds of high-profile public locations in each of our annual editions, serving local markets across Canada. And then if you move down to the second page, there is some pricing on ads, ad sizes, ad pricing. And yeah, that is that item. If there's anything that you guys want to pull out, please raise your hands, let me know. If not, I'll keep moving down. Item 3, Cypress County Ag Connections Conference, Lethbridge County invite. So before you, we have an invitation from Dan Hamilton, Reeve of Cypress County. On behalf of Cypress County, I would like to encourage your council and ratepayers to attend the first annual Cypress County Ag Connections Conference presented by MNP, taking place November 22nd, 2023 in Medicine Hat. And there's some notes on who the speaker is, some of the topics being covered. For more information, to register the event, registration starts on September 1st. If that is something that might interest you, we can address that further. If not, I will keep moving down. Item 4, we have a letter from the desk of Minister Rebecca Schulz of Environment and Protected Areas. This is in regards to the Malloy Drain project 2B, phase 2B. So there had been a letter that had gone out to the ministry requesting additional funding to complete phase 2B of the Malloy Drainage implementation project. While there's currently no provincial program available to fund the anticipated $4.4 million shortfall, Environment and Protected Areas will continue working with the town of Coaldale to assist with any flood mitigation needs. Again, I'd throw it to you, Cole, if you have anything that you'd like to add on this one.
Council had previously passed a motion to support an increased financial contribution. I can't recall exactly what that contribution was, but it was contingent on receiving this financial support from the province. As we did not receive that for the Malloy drainage, we haven't had any subsequent meetings. There probably will be more discussion, and we can strategize on what the next steps are or what council wants to do. So there will be more information or probably requests forthcoming, but once we have that, we'll bring forward it at a future meeting.
Thank you, Cole. Moving down, item 5, Chinook Arch Board Report. So included in your package is the regular report from the Chinook Arch Library. As you are aware, the Lethbridge County supports library services within the boundaries of Lethbridge County through the Chinook Arch, through a per capita funding. That ties into the discussion potentially with the next item that's on here. I am the county's appointee to the board. I would say the biggest challenge facing Chinook Arch is that the last budget cycle go around, there was an ask to up the per capita contribution from municipalities. The city of Lethbridge chose not to participate in that. Therefore, it didn't go ahead across the board for all member municipalities. So there was a substantial funding shortfall as things get more expensive and we face inflationary pressures. So a big kudos to Robin and his team at Chinook Arch for pivoting and making sure that we could come to a point where the budget was sufficient to deliver those services. Going forward, there's always advocacy to the province to expand their grant funding of libraries. But again, that's ongoing. If we move down, item 6, Pitcher Butte Municipal Library. So before you have a letter from Amanda Anderson, Town of Pitcher Butte Library Board Chairman. For the past 3 years, the Lethbridge locations have waived membership fees for all our members, including those residing in the county, reducing our county memberships to 15% of our total patrons. However, those county patrons acquiring free memberships at Lethbridge are still using the Pitcher Butte Library as their main library for their services we provide. In light of the loss of funds, the Town of Pitcher Butte Library respectfully requests that Lethbridge County consider adding a contribution to the Pitcher Butte Library in their yearly budget so we can continue to provide this essential and vibrant service to all patrons using our services. Cole, I'll throw to you again.
So after reviewing this, it would be our recommendation that we redirect Pitcher Butte Municipal Library to the Chinook Arch, and that if we're funding libraries through Chinook Arch, it becomes part of that broader conversation. The CAO of Pitcher Butte was unaware that this letter had come to us when we followed up, and they also agreed that if they receive funding through Chinook Arch, that should continue to be the conduit for that in that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are not all the libraries in the county members of the Chinook Arch? Or how does that work?
I believe,
Yes,
and I'm not sure, I think they are, but it's Coaldale, Pitcher Butte, Colehurst, I believe have.
Colehurst, I don't believe Colehurst has a library
No,
as it sits right now. They have a bookmobile, I think.
Is that what it is?
Through
Okay.
Chinook Arch.
So that's through Chinook Arch as
Yes.
well? And sorry, Jennifer, was it just the two libraries when we looked at the Chinook Arch then? Was it Coaldale and Pitcher Butte that receive funding that we contribute and then gets distributed between those two? Okay, I believe it's just those,
Yes,
those
just
municipalities.
Coldell
yeah.
and Pitcher Butte.
Yeah.
Nobleford has an appointee. They don't have a library. Colehurst has an appointee to Chinook Arch. They also don't have a physical library, but they do have appointees to the board. Good on that one? Okay, so would there be a letter then, or how would you like to handle that, Cole?
If it's okay with council, I can just follow up directly with them and redirect them to the Chinook Arch.
Okay. Okay, moving down, item 7, the 2023 Joanne Perlich Ride for Dreams. So before you, you have invitation, save the date, regarding the Joanne Perlich Ride for Dreams in support of the Lethbridge Therapeutic Riding Association. As we celebrate the Ruby anniversary of the Joanne Perlich Ride for Dreams, we're honoring not just 4 decades of a wonderful tradition, but also the cause at the heart of it, the Lethbridge Therapeutic Riding Association. This year's fundraiser is comprised of 2 events on consecutive days. We invite you to join our cause and participate in the Murray Chevrolet Cadillac Boots Buckle Barbecue event on September 15th amidst a live concert featuring Trevor Panzak, mouth-watering BBQ, and a lively auction. You'll be contributing to LTRA's continued mission. Celebrations continue on the 16th by getting back to our roots with a family-friendly Ride for Dreams trail ride. Below that, you see there are some contributions options. The Ruby Premium Table, regular table, individual tickets. Yeah. So that is before you. If, like I said, if you would like to take that further, please just let me know. And moving down, item 8, Town of Pitcher Butte Urgent Care Center. So you have a letter dated August 29th, 2023. Dear Reeve Council, the town, this is from the desk of Mayor Kathy Moore, Town of Pitcher Butte. The town was recently informed that Alberta Health Services has decided to shut down the Urgent Care Center in Pitcher Butte. The Urgent Care Center provided after-hours medical attention by having the two local Pitcher Butte doctors provide an on-call service to those that needed it. AHS is hosting an engagement session on Wednesday, the 13th of September from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Town of Pitcher Butte Community Center. As this decision will impact services offered to your residents, we are informing you of this meeting and would like to ask if you can post the attached AHS announcements so that your residents are also aware of this decision and the engagement session. And I believe that has happened. That went out on our social media, as I believe Maddie put it through some other channels as well.
Yeah, we've put it through a few inserts and some of our communication distributions as well.
Okay. Anything further on those 8 items of correspondence? If not, we'll keep moving down. Item H, County Council and Committee updates. H1, request to rename Range Road 21-2 to Recovery Road. This was before council several months ago. Cole?
Yes, so we've had an opportunity to review this. We looked at, so the Supervisor of Planning and Development, Hillary, and I have looked at the adjacent zoning off of that road, as well as done some research into, Hillary has done some research into what some of the other municipalities do and what their road renaming policy is. It is our recommendation, and I'll let Hillary speak to the specifics, but it's our recommendation that we do not proceed with renaming Range Road 21-2 to Recovery Road. There is zoning on that road for country residential. Some of the other zoning would not permit, further development of that, so it may create issues, and it may create some issues with emergency service response. And so I'll let Hillary speak to that and maybe some subsequent recommendations for us to develop a road renaming policy.
Thank you, Cole.
Thanks, Council. So yes, in looking at this, we did do some research, or I did some research into looking at what some other municipalities have done in the province with regards to road naming. The general consensus for rural municipalities is that the range road, township road system remains as is in terms of, it's just ease of addressing off of those roads has been, that's what's been recommended, and that's what we saw in other policies within the province. Range Road 21-2 currently has somewhat of an alias right now. There is a little sign somewhere on there that says Research Center Road also, because it goes right through the research center, or historically has. So in the past, the county has done aliases, but not a formalized change to a road name. Mostly in cases because we have established residences, and as Cole mentioned, there is that area structure plan for that section 26, which abuts that particular road, which would be group country residential. There's about a dozen or so people who take their address off that road right now. So changing it, you know, if that is something that council would want to pursue, we'd probably want to have a larger conversation and have a public meeting on that, because that would be significant for those residents in moving forward. One thing that we would recommend moving out of this, just knowing that we currently have a guideline for road naming, but it's mostly for like residential subdivisions. So when you get a new country residential subdivision or industrial subdivision, we might have a naming criteria, but we don't have a policy in place. And I found that a lot of rural municipalities actually do have a naming policy that outlines kind of like, this is how we will structure, you know, the naming of the roads, what we will keep, how we will address requests, how we would name new roads going forward, say like a new country residential area or industrial area. I think that might be a better way moving forward, just so that it's clear that we have some way to direct people as to what, where to find this information, because the guideline, I think it predates, when I was talking to Mike Bly about that, it predates his time here at the county, so it's pretty dated. So that's, moving forward, we would recommend not naming township roads and range roads, but having a naming policy in place so that there's some clarity on that.
Thank you, Hillary. Anything else, Cole? I open up to council for any questions or any further discussion. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd agree with what both Cole and Hillary had said, and would recommend that, or I guess request that administration develop a policy to come back to council around naming. I know we received the email with your response and your rationalization for not naming it, and it all makes, you know, it makes sense to me. So that would be my suggestion, is if we go that avenue and then not look at changing the name of this road.
Thank you, Mark. Anything further from council? If that is the consensus, then perhaps maybe we could direct administration to communicate to Mr. Holstead the rationale and our decision not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Anything further on that one? Okay. H2, Lethbridge County Council attendance update, July 2023. Division 1, Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the 6th County Council meeting, the 20th was the Green Acres Blue Sky Lodge, their 50th anniversary for being a lodge. And it was a very well-attended event. And on the 24th, I met with Cole and we did a little tour of my division.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Division 2, the first participated in the city's Canada Day grand opening ceremonies at Henderson Lake. On the 10th, was asked to participate in an FCC roundtable industry discussion as not only a producer but also as the Reeve of Lethbridge County. The new CEO of FCC was touring throughout the country, and it was an opportunity to have some local industry and elected leaders have a discussion about what's happening in our area, some opportunities, and how potentially FCC as an arm of the Crown could participate in that. Yeah. I think that there's a few other things throughout the month, but that kind of sums up my month. Division 3, Councillor Mark Sayers.
Thanks, Tori. Excuse me. County Council meeting the 6th. I met with Cole on the 17th. The July 18th, we did have the Water Co-op Liaison Committee meeting. It went, I thought, very well. There was, came out at the end with consensus and agreement on moving forward, so that was great. And then finally, like I said, met with Cole, and it was the 31st, sorry, that I met with Cole. That's it, thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Division 4, Deputy Reeve, John Curbis. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Highlights of mine would have to be the Calgary Stampede BML Farm Family Awards. It was a very good celebration and a wonderfully put on event in which the Nichols family received their award that I guess would be sponsored them or nominated. Yeah, nominated would be the right word. Thank you. For and other than that, on July 19th, I went with CAO Beck on a meet and greet with MLA Hunter and Simplot Group. And July 27th, we had a water co-op initial meeting, which I thought went very well. There was some good discussion there, and I think the start of finding some middle ground with the water co-ops was the biggest takeaway from that.
Thank you, John. Division 5, Councillor Eric Van Essen. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. July 6, council meeting. July 7 was CAO tour through the division. Went through some of the notable producers in the area and had a thoroughly enjoyable day with it. July 8, Village of Barons Parade, and July 12, Economic Development Consultation.
Thank you, Eric. Division 6, Councillor Klaas Vanderveen. Klaas?
Yeah, actually, July 5th, I was also at the ribbon cutting of the exhibition opening, which was very, very, very nice the way it went over there. You guys probably heard my Mudridge interview that you guys have to watch your driving and everything like that.
Which you've done very well.
And I hope you guys will hold yourself to that. And yeah, that's basically it. And the water co-op. I think that we got the liaison committee, like John said, I think it went really well.
Thank you, Klaas. Division 7, Morris?
What? Good extended holiday.
Excellent. Thank you, Morris. I'd follow up on what a couple of you touched on, the parades. Again, as always, a big thank you to Maddie Watson. Maddie does a ton of work getting candy, getting floats organized. This year we had a couple parades on the same day, so making sure that we had vehicles, candy, people to throw candy, drivers. Thank you to Cole, Doug, every other staff member that stepped up and drove for us this year. I believe we have one left. I think Saturday's the last one. So it is a lot of work that goes into it, but it's a tremendous opportunity for us as council to be out in the public, to have fun, and just be out there, be visible, and like I say, just to enjoy the day. So a big thank you to Maddie and everyone that puts work in on that. I know you probably have better things to do on a Saturday than help out us councillors, but we really do appreciate it. It's great, and I think it's important that we do it, so thank you. We can move down. We have one closed session item today, McCain MOU discussion. FOIP Section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third parties, and Section 25, disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body. With that, I would entertain a motion to enter a closed session. Lauren?
So moved.
Lauren has moved to enter a closed session at 11:10 a.m. this morning. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mark? Everybody? Mark has motioned at 11:51 a.m. to exit a closed session. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. You ready, Candace? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that Lethbridge County sign the MOU with McCain Foods.
Thank you, Lauren. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much to staff to all the work on that. Is there anything else before we conclude our meeting today? If not, I would entertain a motion. Morris? Morris has moved to adjourn at 11:52 this morning. Thank you very much, everyone. Candace has supper for us downstairs, so if we want to shift downstairs and then supper, did I say? Yeah. Supper